Welcome to the Southern Report. Thank you so much for joining me again. And I'm carrying on my political series, which I'm delighted to do because I'm meeting some incredible people and I'm about to meet another incredible person from our Fair Isles, which is in the UK. So I'm going to bring on Scott Huggins, who's another prospective parliamentary candidate for Reform UK. We will do our usual geography lesson, and dear Scott will explain where he's standing in this wonderful country that we call the United Kingdom. Scott, thank you so much for joining me, sir, by this digital medium. It's lovely to meet you.
Morning, Mark. Yes, it is. It makes it a lot easier nowadays, doesn't it, with all this technology?
Absolutely. So, Scott, I'm going to start off with my usual UK map that then will express the rump at the bottom that sticks out to the east, which is the region that you are in. So, Scott, from London, whereabouts are you, would you say?
Or you go to about 1 o'clock and head out towards until you hit the sea, and I'm near there. But maybe right. 2 o'clock. It's up on that pointy bit that's going out towards Norway.
Okay, brilliant. Well, let's show the constituency. Here you are, sir. Here you are. Yeah. And our bottom small map just shows you in red, and then it affirms your constituency. So could you name the constituency that you're standing in?
Yeah, it's the Waveney Valley constituency. It's a new constituency, so this is the first time it's existed after a carve up and a rejiggling of the electoral map last year, and it's grabbed parts of 3 other constituencies, so that there is now there will be an MP who covers the area that we call Waveney Valley, which is basically a crossover between South Norfolk and North Suffolk. And it's important because those 2 counties, where they stop and the county line is, there's not an awful lot of integration and cross working together. And I think an MP that covers both areas will be able to pull in the 2 different county councils and to get some synergies and cohesion in the strategies for the region. And I'm told, I have to take some faith because I've not fact checked it, but I'm told I'm either the most or second most rural constituency in England. Now, I suspect Scotland and Wales have got a far greater claim to that. But for England, I was quite both impressed and a bit perturbed with that, because it means I've got a lot of ground to cover to get to everybody.
I hear you, and that wonderful answer from you then segues into my first question, because, and you've just answered it, of what is the makeup of your constituency? You've said that it's very rural. How many, what are the towns, etc., etc., and you've just laid out that you've got a lot of work to do for the ground. So it is extremely rural, then, sir.
Yeah, there's no real big towns. There are big towns that buffer around the side of us, so we're not far from Bury St Edmunds. We're on the border to Stowmarket. We've got the biggest towns are Diss, Halsworth, and Bungay, and we duck under for some reason Beccles. That's not in our show. And then there's lots of smaller market towns, the Holstons and Eyes of this world. And then the rest are towns and small villages, which, quite a lot of these villages are just one street villages where you travel through the street and there's houses on either side. There might be the occasional offshoot, but not much else going on. And so it's proper rural, and the community is facing the dilemma of how do you earn money in rural communities. It used to all be in the fields, and with the farming industry, they employ virtually nobody now, but they are a big industry in the area, and they and most people have turned to things like hospitality and tourism to really be able to bring home money to feed the family and to get a lifestyle going in this rural area.
So what concerns are the constituents that you're mixing with? Because I know you're out and about. What are the concerns that they are bringing to you?
Well, they've got the same concerns as everybody else, along with the cost of living crisis, that is really front and center for everybody's mind. How do I put food on the table? How do I keep the wolves from the door, in terms of their finances and everything else? There is also immigration is a big issue. We don't have immigration per se like the likes of Dover and the East Kent communities and the likes of Boston, etc. But we do have the kickback from immigration, which everybody else does have, because the country is now ultimately it's full up. We do need a one in, one out policy, and because we haven't had that for the last 10 years, and we've 10 million people more than anybody is involved with the strategies as designed for and built for. We've run out of school spaces, we've run out of hospital appointments, GP appointments, nobody can get a dentist. The housing sector is under proper strain, and people can't afford the rents because basic supply and demand. If you haven't got enough houses, people have to pay more for them. And all of these are unique across the country. The whole country is suffering from that, and Waveney Valley is no different. Waveney Valley is probably worse off than some areas in that respect, for certain. But unique to us are the more rural aspects of how do the people who haven't got a car, or I can't even afford to run a car now, how do they get about? They live in villages where they see a bus once a day if they're lucky. Some of these villages, it's absurd. And I grew up in a rural village there was about 600 people in the village. It was a lovely little village in East Kent. And to get to school, I got a bus. To get back from school, I got a bus. But the buses ran on the hour, every hour, except for Sundays where it was every 2 hours. And as a child, I could cycle around, or I could get on the bus and I could go into Folkestone, or I could go into Ashford, and I'd be there within 45 minutes on a bus that ran regularly. You can't do that in Waveney Valley. There might be one or two routes, but the majority of these villages are left high and dry where transport's concerned. So that's a real issue to people. And I can't see why the county councils don't just accept that you can't leave these communities alone, and you have to do something about it and bring in smaller shuttle buses running regularly that everybody will then start to use.
So what the county council, do people feel as though they're getting value for money? Because you have described, and I'm finding this out with the discussions that I'm having with, amazing prospective parliamentary candidates up and down the country. So we talked about the infrastructure, so housing, etc., as other areas have raised, sewage issues, all of this. You've just talked about being able to get hold of the GP, etc. So do people feel that they're getting value for money from their county council? Do they feel that they can approach their council?
I suspect most people don't feel they get value for money. Certainly they're approachable, but their hands are also, to be fair to the county council system, their hands are also tied. The vast majority of their revenue is controlled by central government, and they've got a mandate to deal with things like policing, education, roads, etc., or the lesser roads, etc. But their money just about stretches to all that. They haven't got enough money for all of the adult childcare services they're also mandated with. And really the whole setup needs reforming. And Reform UK have definitely said, where that's concerned, we need to look at it. We need to get power back with the communities, and power really translates to money, so that central government isn't holding the purse string. Sometimes I feel like central government's an overbearing spouse that has all the money and, controls the other spouse through this channel of finance. And it should be different to that. You should have the ability within the county council to make changes and to find the money to make those changes. Even going back to the absolute basics, some of their finance comes in from business rates. Far too complex how that works. I'm a small businessman and I pay business rates, and I see the endless toings and froings of what is your bill going to be. It could be this, it could be that. Then central government do something and it changes it, and it really just should be much more simple for the likes of me. But for some people, it's even crippling. The high streets are dying a death for a number of reasons. The obvious one is people aren't going there and they're buying stuff online. but you can still alter that from a central perspective by saying, do you know what, let's get rid of business rates. Let's make it, for example, a turnover tax where Amazon cannot get out of paying a fair share for the amount of business they now benefit from in the internet world. And the small local businesses are then subsidized by those sort of funds that come in, and they're allowed to, not pay a business rate, pay a turnover rate over a certain threshold. And it's small tweaks like that will really help the local high streets. They're dying a death. I've been through, I is a small village not too far from here. I've been through there today. It's its busiest day. It's its market day. It doesn't have a market that you'd think of in the old traditional sense anymore. But it still makes an effort to try and get people in today. It was fairly busy, but there's a lot of shops there closed, and then I can't see how they're going to reopen unless changes occur in this area.
Sorry, I do apologise. Sorry,
I was just going to say they're the sort of key issues to people in rural areas at the moment. They haven't got a banking eye, they haven't got a post office, and that's I spoke to shopkeepers today, and they said, well, it would be better if people had other reasons to come here.
Yes, yeah, and you're talking about footfall, of course, which is certain resources withdraw, but and practical things that we need to do, they're withdrawn, so the footfall, people are not going in there. Scott, you made a very we're talking about farming communities. How is there have you had discussions with farmers? How do farmers feel about food security, all of this kind of thing?
Yeah, I have actually. I mean, they've been very active and very engaging. They're as a community, they tend to be true blue, and the Conservative Party benefits from that. And this is a blue constituency. Historically, either side of it have always returned Conservatives. I think South Norfolk once had a Liberal MP back in the yonder, but has always been a Tory sort of stronghold since then. But even the farmers, which are the foundations of all of that, are calling me up and saying, how can I help? Can I put a sign up? Can I, I've got a busy, a filled by a busy road. I want to put a sign up, etc. And they're all saying the same thing. They're fed up with the Conservative Party. They, en masse, they are now looking for something else. They're not going to vote Labour. They're not going to vote Green on the main. Some of them might be leaning towards that, but the majority of them are looking at us, Reform, to help out. So they're really active and engaged. In terms of their issues, like everybody else, they've got concerns. They've got concerns with immigration. They need immigration. So they need people to come in to help with the harvests and to help with the produce that they grow. And this is understandable. That's essential immigration. It's always occurred. People have always come in and helped with whatever harvest is needed, because the local people don't do that anymore. We've all got our own jobs. So that whole setup changed between the wars, really, and has carried on. So from Reform's perspective, we see that as essential immigration. We would make sure that was as easy as possible, and will still continue. If you needed foreign hands to come in to pick your asparagus, and they're only here for a month because that's the asparagus season, then they're going to come in. If you're growing herbs and you need people all year round, but they are, it's a hands-intensive labour environment, then we'll make sure that happens, because I see that as essential labour. Otherwise, we don't produce the food, which, that would be bonkers to go down that road. But they also are very concerned about the power of the supermarkets. I've worked in the food industry, so I fully understand how the supermarkets dominate the whole sector, and they dominate it vertically. They dominate the retailers. They are the retailers. They dominate the wholesalers, the manufacturers, and they dominate the growers. And that is not healthy. It does bring down prices. But I know people don't feel this at the moment, but our food expenditure at the moment is the lowest it's ever been. With the food is not. It used to be the biggest aspect of our our expenditure, if you go back to the 50s and 60s, and now it's taken over by, I think our biggest expenditure is transport, then it's housing, and food is a lowly 5 or 7% of our expenditure. That is because of the competition, but also because the farming industry has become so good at their job. They're very efficient. They're world beating in terms of the technology they use. But that can only take them so far. And then when you've got a supermarket going, oh, we don't want to give you that margin, we want to make it a lot less, that's unfair. And I think the farming community should be able to fight back with their own. I'm not necessarily saying we go back to the days of the milk marketing board, but you do need institutions that can coordinate the farming community to push back against these never-ending chips away at their margins. And then they should be able, at the end of the day, they need that money coming in for investment to keep growing and to developing their industry. But they're way ahead of most other industries in the UK in terms of how they're utilising technology. And to get on a completely different subject, one of my real bugbears and why I got involved in politics is because of the lack of growth in productivity in the country. All politicians talk about GDP, and that is irrelevant because it's just a turnover thing. And what you need to know is really what direction you're going in and how effective you are. And that's about productivity, which should be the only measure, well, not the only measure, but should be the main measure we use. And they should stop using GDP because that means nothing really. And it's easy to say GDP's grown when you've imported 10 million people. Well, of course, there's more money going around because there's 10 more million people. But per person, so GDP per capita has decreased almost, for example, 1% this year alone. And that keeps going down. And since 2008, we've had a terrible productivity run of things. And that's why we're in such a pickle. And it feeds into the farming industry by, for example, they are forever looking for better ways to do things. So they're looking at vertical farming. I've not been to one, but I hope if I'm elected to get soon up to speed with all of this, to go see the farms that are growing things in greenhouses in, almost techie environments that you see on a spaceship in a Hollywood sci-fi film, where they're not even in the soil. They just get the nutrients they need fed into them. And as bizarre as that seems, because we've got lovely fields out there, that is one way of solving the planet's issue of we haven't got enough food. And you can't ignore that. You have to go down that route and you have to encourage it. And that can only happen if the farmers are being paid enough for the food that they're supplying. Long-winded answer, but hopefully that covered what.
No, Scott, fantastic. Because are you then raising this whole discussion that people have, where we feel that we're a wealth distribution instead of the fact that we need to get back to wealth creation? And of course, we have an incredible history of that as a country. It's a bit like when Labour manifesto comes out and says, well, we're going to create wealth, and we're going, well, what's been happening over the last 14 years? What's been going on? You're not. What is that? What you're saying in regard to a mindset?
I think politics. I studied politics at A level, and I just remember back to those days. I sort of had a theory that politics boils down to from a human level, two approaches. You either are the sort of person that thinks the state is going to look after you and take care of things, or you're the sort of person that says, no, I can do that. I can do the heavy lifting. I can look after myself. And I should be able to generate some to put into the pot to help out those who can't. And I'm definitely of the latter. I just think it's important that we breed the next generation are very hardworking. They have a strong work ethic. They enjoy and take pride in going out to work, to produce, to service, to whatever they're doing, whatever their line of work is, chosen profession is, and they add into the communities and they generate enough income for themselves to live a worthwhile and fulfilling life, and then the taxes filter in that we can then use in the community and wherever it's needed. But I think sometimes politicians forget this and they just think, oh no, we just need a bigger slice of this pie. But you've got to grow the pie. you can't keep saying, so every time you say we're just taking 1% more, and they don't say they're taking it, they just do take it by stealth, really. You know, the current trend is to not increase all the tax bands. That's not just for personal taxes, that's for VAT, it's for across the board. They're not increasing the tax bands where you didn't pay any taxes or you didn't have to register for VAT. And more people get dragged into that. And it's a break on productivity. So, for example, VAT, as a small business person, you sit there looking at this, and it's a cliff edge of £90,000, which sounds like a lot, but if you're trading, it's not. If you're, a one-man band plumber, then £90,000. What you do is you get there quite quickly, because plumbing is not cheap nowadays, and if you're fitting somebody a bathroom, you can soon get to those sort of levels. And there's you just think to yourself, well, if I'm about to go over the £90,000 level, it's not worth me trading, because I'm going to end up paying all the VAT on everything the moment I hit £90,000. So I may as well just keep under that £90,000. And they end up working 3 or 4 days a week rather than 5 days a week, because they don't want to hit that tax. And to push through, they've got to really make it worthwhile. They've got to go to over £105,000 by my calculation. So really, you're looking at jumping from £90,000 to £105,000, £110,000. You've got to find another £15,000 of income throughout the year, and that's 1 day's work. So you're not going to do that 5th day. You're just going to sit back and you'll stay there, get used to that, and be unproductive for that 5th day. And that's one example where the tax situation is just causing this almost sclerotic stiffening of everybody's will to work by endless tax chipping away at the tax.
Brilliant explanation, because you are putting it in the real world. You're talking about people's real lives. Quickly going back to the farmers, is there within the area, within them, is there another pressure on the whole green issues? Are they finding that they're either being asked to double glaze their fields in solar panels, as someone as brilliant Rob Waverney in Bolsover describes it? Is there that pressure going on?
There is. So the problem with the word green is it almost always gets brought back to the climate change argument, and the green thing is much bigger than that. So there is, I'm much more bothered about pollution than I am climate change, because I know pollution is man-made, whereas climate change is it's not arguably, it has always been there before man had anything to do with it. The climate has always been falling and raising in temperatures, and will continue to do so for the life of the planet. That isn't my beat, and I think we're focusing on the wrong issue. We should be focusing on pollution, because we are polluting the seas with all the plastics. We are killing the soil with all the chemicals we're adding. We are, we know that if we kill off the bee population, we're going to have a serious problem, much more worse than a few degrees of temperature. And I look at my weather today, isn't that annoying? My house is flooded a bit, which are proper concerns. However, if you can't grow food, you are dead within weeks, and that's the sort of thing pollution can bring about. So I just think we should, and I think the farming community gets this. They are starting to understand that they can't rely on wholesale the chemicals approach to things. They've got to make sure that the pollinators are protected. They've got to make sure that the balance within the fields and the countryside is kept, and they are all on board, because it's in their interest to keep nature in balance. I don't think, some farmers might be up for having a load of solar panels on their fields, only because subsidies are being paid, though.
Yes.
If those subsidies weren't there, they wouldn't be up for that. And where reform is concerned, we've basically said we need to pause that whole process and just go through it and go, does this make sense? And put some real numbers in it, because we don't believe the numbers we've been fed. And I personally think that we need to actually come up with a policy where you don't need the subsidies. People will want to do it, and whatever it is, whether it's being put solar panels on. But why do you need to lose good fields when there are thousands of acres of, for example, barns in the farming community that can have fields on them, warehouses? I drove over the Dartford Bridge the other week, and I look at the massive warehouses that got up there. As far as I can tell, very few of them have got solar panels on their roofings, and the question is, why not? Why would you not put them up there? And you need a holistic approach to all of this. So I'm a great fan of nuclear power. I think that's one of the areas where it can do the heavy lifting, so that we don't need solar panels that barely work in the winter and only work on a good day in the summer and make the countryside look horrible. In the meantime, I don't think we need anywhere near as many of those as we've got. And when we do have them, there's more appropriate places. And I think a lot of farmers are on board with that. But that's but while the subsidies are here, some of them might be keen to milk that certain gravy train as it goes by.
And you're talking about traditional farming, where you're talking about crop rotation, leaving a field fallow for particular season, etc. I'm not an expert on that, but it's those discussions.
Nor am I, but I know I've had conversations with farmers in my community, and they say, well, we don't need to rotate anymore because we can just add the chemicals back in. And that opens up a whole other question of, okay, well, these chemicals, what harm can they do? Can we avoid adding them? Because they are a big cost as well. And it might be there are small gains through that process, but the cost of it may be that it balances down. And some farmers have proven that if you go organic and go back to the traditional ways, if you do it properly and with the modern technology backing you up, you can have a really successful farm without having to keep dumping chemicals on. But I'm not saying no to chemicals. I'm just saying that we need to really look at it all and say, where is the balance, and almost adopt best practice. And farmers are good at adopting best practice. They do share information with each other. They do visit each other. I know farmers from different areas, and they say, where do you live? And I say so. And they say, yes, I know that landowner. Yes, they came to see me, or I went to see them. They do this particular thing really well. And so that I know that they're sharing their technology and their ideas. And really, I want to get involved in the farming community if I'm elected to understand how we can bring forward a way to make sure best practice gets through the industry as quickly as possible.
I mean, one of the wonderful things I thought of the recent the Jeremy Clarkson series in regard to him farming and then revealing the urbanites, what actually really goes on a farm, what goes on, and the challenges of being a farmer. So I think that is excellent. And the reason why focusing on this, because this is in your constituency and this is very important. So the next thing is the whole thing about education and opportunities for young people. What about apprenticeships within the area? Is there an agricultural college in the area that needs to expand? Tell me about that. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have got. I think certainly Norfolk does that really well. They've got a couple of fantastic colleges that people go to for all manner of countryside focused careers, from equestrian through to farming, and like all of these things, when the apprenticeship scheme process was really destroyed to me it was back in the 80s. I feel like I was one of the last sets of school leavers who had an option to go into an apprenticeship. Certainly by the 90s, they'd all disappeared. I don't get why they were removed. I never understand it. I don't remember it being discussed to any great extent. They just suddenly stopped. It's one of those probably by politicians who came in and thought, I've got to do something, and they were changing things that didn't need changing. But essentially, we've got to get back to that where you aren't forced to go to university and get a heck of a loan that you can't then afford to pay back. You should be able to go, no, I'm just going to go for apprenticeship. I know it's lowly paid to start off with, but I know I'm getting the training that will allow me to you're teaching a person to fish rather than giving them fish each day. It's that process. You've got to acquire these skills to move forwards. And I would encourage that as well. I think more of that needs to happen. I think we really need to readopt the apprenticeships process whole scale, for the benefit of all, for the benefit of employers and the potential employees. But saying that, we also need to recognise we are not back in the 20th century. You don't get a job for life anymore unless you're very lucky, or some might say very unlucky. Naturally, the career path now is more crazy paving, and you don't know where you're going to go, and you can chop and change. And as an individual, you've got to keep current, but you need the institutions there to allow you to keep current. And you need to also be taught at school. I think one of the key bits from coming out of school, and not every school does this, some do it excellently, others don't do it at all, is you've got to teach an individual to be curious, to be interested in things, and to keep being curious and interested, and to not stagnate. So you teach your pupils as they leave, the world is your oyster, but that oyster is going to be forever changing into something else. So adapt all the time so that you keep current. And that feeds back into the curriculum. Really, does it do that? I don't really think so anymore.
So, and critical thinking is absolutely paramount within there. I would have thought to throw in as well, as you say, to get people,
totally.
to get people to think. Scott, I'm just conscious of your time, and it's been a wonderful conversation as well. So, how can people reach you? How can people come along and say we would like to help, because you've got this big constituency to get round? And have you got hustings coming up? Have you had radio appearances, etc.?
Yeah, all of that's ongoing at the moment. We really, I can't pretend that we were caught off guard with the short notice of the election, but I think everybody was. In my constituency, one or two parties are a bit more organised. Certainly, Labour have a big machine that they can call upon to help out. We're getting that machine going now. The easiest way to volunteer is to go to my personal website, which I've dedicated to my political aims now. So that's scotthuggins.com. And when you go to scotthuggins.com, one of the buttons is how can I help? There's also a button to donate to the campaign as well, and another button just to be kept in contact. And and that one links back to the Reform Main Party website, for example. But essentially, we need people on the ground to be delivering leaflets, to be going into market towns, to be asking the shopkeepers to put things up, to be help erect election boards. We've got election boards going out all this week and next week. Ideally, that would have been happening 2 weeks ago, but we've had to start from scratch and get it all organised. But they're all going out. So we've had our first sets of banners and election balls started going out this week, and that will snowball through into next week as well. And we've become more and more visible. But if people want to help, ask them to go to scotthuggins.com, click on the help button. Then I've got a team of people from there will take over and get them on the ground and helping out.
Brilliant. And if farmers are, once you can get them with the banners, etc., in their fields, then that would also be a great help to you as well, Scott. Scott, is there anything else that you want to bring up now in this discussion for constituents? Is there any other concerns that they are bringing to you?
I think one of my concerns is I think people are so fed up. I fear we're going to have a low turnout, which really worries me, because people are turning their backs on all politics, on all politicians. And I get that why they're doing that, because we've had such an abysmal time, I think, for the last 30 years, if I'm honest. But particularly since 2008, it's been abysmal. And I think people are turning their back on politics. And I would say to them, don't. Just remember that democracy is a fragile beast that you have to tend to, you have to nurture, and you have to feed. You must be involved. And if the only involvement you have is to vote once every 5 years, then so be it. But don't duck out completely, because it could collapse, and where we will be. there are lots of countries out there you can point at and go, that's where it ends up. You don't want that, so why don't you just make sure that's not going to happen? But if you can get involved more, then great, do so. But at least vote, and and I would also say listen to everybody as well. I get a little bit of people just trying to bark at me various views they have about reform. But to be honest, most people are courteous and will listen and will have an engaging chat. And essentially, we're all humans. We all have our opinions. Mine's no more valid than the next person's. I just say to people, give each of the candidates time, listen to them, and make your minds up on their cases. Because I think if you do that, I'm very confident that the majority of people will come to the Reform UK, because we are the party of tolerance, fairness, and common sense. So why would you not vote for that?
I hear you loudly. Scott, I just want to thank you very much for your time and commend you, because I know you are out there and you are busy. So how over the next day or so, over the next week, what is going to be happening? Where is Scott Huggins going to be going?
I've got a diary that's filling up as we're speaking. I've got here, and I've heard a couple of things on my phone saying you've been invited, you've got this, you've got that, you've got the other. Today's a bit of media focus, so I've got an interview with one of our local newspapers, the EDP, in a short while. I've just been to this morning, where we're trying to battle around the football in terms of going on knocking on doors. You don't really want to disturb matches that like the England match, for example. And I suspect the Scotland match tonight is going to be a difficult one to knock on doors with. But essentially, there's a lot more of that. I'm going into the market towns. I'm in Holston. As soon as I finish with you, I'm going down to Holston to deliver leaflets, chat to people, and just answer people's questions. Tomorrow, I can't remember without looking at my diary, but I've got a couple of other places to go, and I've got a hustings at. Let me just have a look at my diary. It's getting pretty. It's getting pretty bonkers.
Brilliant.
But that's great. Yeah. So I'm at Bungay Market tomorrow, and then I'm at on Friday, I'm in Dis and their market, and then we're leafleting. Once we've done the market, we'll be leafleting in the area as well. I'm also helping out putting signage out as well. We've got a couple of guys who have volunteered to help with that. Halesworth on the 22nd. Halesworth is, it's furthest east we go, really, is Halesworth, and it's a town I know a little of, but I haven't engaged with so much in the past. But it's a really active town, so I'm keen to get in there and to hear what people have got to say and what their problems are. And then next week we've got hustings at Dis High School. We've got hustings in Holston. We've got on the 25th we've got hustings in another hustings in Dis as well. No, actually that's been moved to the 26th, I can see. And then we're working out a couple of other villages and smaller towns. We're doing hustings as well. So I really enjoy the hustings. They're great fun.
No, brilliant, because it's I know you are getting out and about, which is absolutely brilliant, and it's good because, as you say, it gives people access to you and vice versa, because listening is so important for you then to say, I get in, this is what I wish to do. Scott, I just want to thank you for your time. If there's anything else you want to say, I know I've said it once, I'll say it again, then feel free, sir. But I know you're busy, but thank you.
Yeah, there's one more thing. If people want to follow me on social media, they can find me on Facebook. It's Scott Huggins Reform UK. And on Instagram, it's Scott F. Huggins, or at Scott F. Huggins. I'm new to these things. I've tried to avoid it. Social media all my life, and I've been dragged into it with this to start kicking and screaming, but I'm quite enjoying it now. And on X, it is let me just have a look. It is,
don't worry.
Yeah, I think it's Scott Huggins at not even at no, that's my Facebook. I should know this now. This is how new I am to it all.
Well, do not worry. I get it. I totally understand that, sir. But Scott, thank you very much indeed. Don't go away. I'll say goodbye to you over the other side as we finish the show. But I just want to thank you very much for giving us a wonderful overview of your constituency and what you were doing and what the concerns are. So thank you very much, sir, for joining me on the Sutherland Report today.
You're welcome.